Hi everybody, and welcome again to our third series of the Facebook Live events for Black History Month. My name is Aman and I'm the Inclusion and Diversity Coordinator here at the RPS. So the focus of today's Facebook Live is the importance of allyship, and I'm really pleased to be joined by another really incredible panel. So we've got Claire Howard, Clinical Lead for Medicines Optimization, Elsie Gomez, Chair of the UK Black Pharmacist Association, Tessa Reflection, the Interim Chief Pharmacist at Darrant Valley Hospital, and Sandra Gidley, RPS President. So we'll consider the importance of allyship today and how individuals in senior leadership roles can help develop pharmacy leaders to increase representation of Black pharmacists in leadership positions across all levels of pharmacy. And in particular, considering an intersectional view, because we are an all-female panel today, of both for Black women, because there's a gender and a race barrier to progression to leadership roles. In the last Facebook Live, we did also cover some of these barriers to representation and visibility in more detail, such as conscious and unconscious bias. So please do, if you're interested in finding out what they are, please do go and watch that. So I just wanted to kind of start by thinking about a definition of what an ally is. So for myself, an ally is any person that actively promotes and aspires to advance a culture of inclusion through intentional, positive and conscious efforts that benefits people as a whole and a community as a whole. So everyone has the ability to be an ally because we all have some sort of privilege from our perspective. And in doing that research, I also looked at what is allyship, and I really liked one of the definitions I found, which is a lifelong process of building relationships based on trust, consistency, and accountability with underrepresented groups, and an opportunity to grow and learn about ourselves whilst building confidence in others. So it's a very inclusive view. So with that definition in mind, I wanted to start by asking each of our panel members to share any particular experiences or reflections over the last 6 months since race has come into sharp focus on what allyship means to them. So I'll start with Elsie.
Hi, thank you very much for having me and for inviting me. So in terms of reflection on the last 6 months, if I were to be honest, I would say it has been quite tiring. With race discriminations and everything that have come around it, what we have had and personally have had is lots of requests for me to be talking about issues that we face in the pharmacist profession. And while I am more than happy, I will always be happy to highlight the issues that are affecting us and put on the table solutions. What I would love to have seen is that in having so much request, having people coming in and saying this is what we need to do. And I think the burden has been put on us, the Black pharmacists, to be out there and saying what is it that we want. And the truth is that we want to hear what you can do for us. And I love the theme of today's Facebook Live, because it's about how hopefully we will be discussing how we can get that support and help. Because to me, allyship means, as you explained, it's a lifelong process. You cannot say today I'm going to be an ally. You really need to be inspired. You want to do it. It needs to mean something to you. And I do recognize not everyone is going to be an ally, but if you feel that changes need to come, then try to be one, because that is what being an ally means. It's like having that inspiration, that having that willing, needing. It's actually a need that you want for this particular cause. Either it's like equality for gender, equality for race. You want that change, and you will speak about it. You will be an activist, and you will push for that change. You are on mute, Amanda.
Sorry, you think I know what I'm doing by now, having done these. Claire, sorry, did you want to reflect on your last 6 months?
So I think I first started thinking about allyship actually before the last 6 months in the work that I've been doing around supporting women in leadership. And I kind of wrestled with this issue, because at first I was very wedded to this is for women to forge ahead. And then when I saw how powerful it was having men as part of that movement, saying, actually, we want equality in the workplace, we want women to reach their potential, I started to think about what allyship truly meant. And obviously that has come into sharp focus over the last 6 months. I've reflected a lot, you know, after the incident in America. And I think, first of all, you have to start, you can't be an ally until you first do some reflection of yourself. And my first response to that, I mean, obviously a visceral response, as everybody had, and it was truly, truly shocking. And then my response afterwards was, when we started to talk about unconscious bias and the things you might do, I really reflected on what might I do that I didn't do on purpose, that I certainly didn't do consciously, and I would be horrified if people viewed it like that. But I think you've got to have some difficult conversations with people to unpick that. And so I did. I rang colleagues and said, have I ever made you feel other, different, and explored my own behaviour first? And then I think when you've done that, and that is a lifelong process, we all get it wrong a lot, and with different groups, and we've got to learn that. But I think what I've seen over the last little while with the work the RPS are doing and with others, that there are positive, conscious actions, as you defined, Aman, that I can take that support people who've had a different experience coming up through me, may have experienced very different things to me, but I can support that. And I think the ultimate judge of whether you're an ally or not is not whether I define myself as one, it's what those around me see in terms of my actions. It's difficult, it's not easy. I certainly never want to patronize anybody, make anybody feel like a victim. I think particularly, you know, the Black women in pharmacy is an incredible movement with some incredibly talented women. And what I need to understand is, what can I do that's helpful, but be mindful of getting that message right. And that might be different for different people. And that's a tricky thing. And I think that's some of why, you know, white people kind of sometimes struggle with this agenda. They want to do the right thing, but it's difficult. But I think it starts with yourself. Your actions speak for themselves. And you've got to have some quite difficult conversations and be brave enough to have those and know you might get them wrong in order to fulfill your potential as an ally.
Thank you, Claire. Tessa?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for having me as part of this incredible panel for this particular session as well. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. So just reflecting on the last 6 months or so, I think that after the initial evidence that came through regarding the impact on COVID on BME people, and then rapidly followed by the George Floyd murder, I would definitely say that my initial feelings were shock, but also an incredible feeling of wariness of, oh, we're here again, and are people only just realizing this right now? I definitely it reminded me very much of the quite public, brutal beating that Rodney King suffered in America. And when I checked the time frame of that, that was in 1992. And before that, when I realized that some of my earliest childhood memories again were about police brutality just down the road from me in Brixton, where a lady called Cherry Gross was shot during a police raid on her house, which sparked the Brixton riots. I just was flabbergasted at how much time had gone and how little progress had been made in terms of race equality, in terms of people's awareness about the difficulties that Black people have every single day of their working lives. And I really started to feel, what next? What's going to be different about this particular murder? What's going to be different about these statistics? And I think over the last few months, just seeing the wave of support and starting to really understand and unpick what the differences were, which were that people who were not Black were now speaking up, you know, seeing the protests that occurred around the world. And I really, really my hope is that we can now latch on to this concept of allyship and really promote it and help people to understand what they can do as individuals every single day, and that it's not just big movements like Black Lives Matter, or for me or for Elsie to be up and speaking about our lived experiences, but that we can latch onto that and people can really start to understand what their privileges are and what they can do day to day to help and support the anti-racist agenda.
Thank you, Tessie. And Sandra?
Sorry, just trying to unmute myself. I suppose, like Claire, in a way, this has been something that's been more than 6 months. I've always thought that I was, I'm a liberal, I'm quite right on, and I understand all of this. And just to give people who don't know me a little bit of background, I did a lot of work trying to work out why there weren't very many women MPs. Why anybody would want to be one these days, I don't know, but that's another matter. And what I realised was quite interesting, and I think now we know it as subconscious bias, but I did an exercise which I first developed with school children. And you could see that when people thought about an MP, they were actually thinking of a white middle-aged man who'd been to public school. Simple as that. And it was a bit of an eye-opener to me that we had to almost change the how do you change people's perceptions, and how do you change those biases? Because all of these people thought they were very liberal and right on too. So there's a big societal issue that we can't even begin to tackle, really. But I think we can learn something from, if we don't, see Elsie shaking her head, she's absolutely right too, because what I was going on to say was, if we won't try, we might as well give up and go home now. And I think where we are with race is almost where women were years ago, before we even start talking about intersectionality and all the rest of it. So I make no apologies for being a bit of a feminist, and I've always done lots to encourage women. But actually, I've seen that through my specific filter, and I think that the big thing for me over the last 6 months is, well, it's okay, Sandra. Yeah, you've done actually quite a lot there, but you haven't had a look at who the women are. So we need a diversity of, if we're thinking about women on panels, we don't just sort of tick the women box, we make sure that other boxes are ticked as well. And it's not just tokenism, and this is what really frustrates me, because in any system, what we usually find is the same, when we're trying to think of people to be on a panel or anything like that, the same names come to mind. And it's almost hard to break into that. It was hard for me when I was first on the political circuit. And, the chaps are quite good at the old networking. But one of the things that really, to come to allyship, what really made an impact on me when I was trying to be a member of parliament was actually it was the men who helped me that was the most helpful thing. And they didn't have anything to gain from doing that, but they were just using their positions of influence to try and improve the system for everybody. And I suppose over the last 6 months, I've realised, well, yeah, I do. I've never really particularly thought of myself as privileged. I've got quite a sort of humble background, but actually I am very privileged to be president of the RPX, and I need to use that role to try and ensure that I don't just see black faces when it's Black History Month. That is completely wrong. Doing something concrete about it at the moment with COVID is actually a lot. It's harder than I thought it would be, because there are fewer events. So it's good we're having this today. but I'm open to suggestions as how to help. I just actually tried to join the UK Black Pharmacists group, and maybe we could talk about this. I'm pending approval because, as you can see, I'm not black. But I was told on an RPS call by a Welsh black pharmacist that I was able to join. So I was a bit alarmed that, you know, when I read some of the page, I thought, oh, will they let me in? But yes, we have to work together and use our positions of influence. And the thing I would really, really try to get over, two things. Nobody wants to deliberately upset somebody. So if somebody's saying something that really sets your teeth on edge, just find a nice way to point it out to them so they don't make the mistake again. I've benefited from that in my time. And the second thing is an observation in life in general. There are we people and there are they people. So I like to think I'm a we person. So it's how are we going to tackle this? And we need to get some of the they people who are saying, oh, how are they going to do it? What are they doing about it? We need to get some of those activated and involved and helping make the world a fairer place.
Thank you, Sandra. You've kind of nicely gone into what my next question was going to be about. What can people do to be an ally, and how can they start? So I've heard as well in all of this work that people want to do something, but they don't know how to help. So it's how can people be allies? So I'll start with Tessa to begin with for this one.
Okay, thank you. I think sometimes people feel that they need to be in very senior positions in order to make a difference and to, you know, be supportive. But I see it differently. I think that everybody in their own sphere of influence can make a difference and be an ally. People who have, you know, thought about their privilege, I'll put that in inverted commas, or who just have sort of woken up to what's going on and can see that there are injustices and inequalities, who look around, who hear things, when you hear something, that you have the courage to be able to point it out, to say something, to say that's not right, who, you know, we are working at the moment in sort of we sort of live parallel lives at the moment in our working lives. Even we work beside people, we're not really working with them, we don't look at them, we don't understand their particular home life or their culture, where they're from. You know, that ability to just ask a question at break time, you know, oh, what are you eating there, you know, seems interesting. Be curious about other people, about other people's cultures, and sometimes, you know, you don't have to be, sorry Sandra, you don't have to be the president of the RPS to make that difference, but you can just be in your working environment to make that person feel heard, to be included within that conversation. Have those open conversations with people who may not be feeling confident to start those conversations. And in order to do that, you really have to do a bit of reflection, to do some learning about other races, other cultures, and be willing to listen, and also to start to develop your inner strength and to steel yourself that those conversations that you may start to have may not be very comfortable, that it may be difficult, that you may hear things that you don't want to hear. You don't have to be wearing a hood or, you know, have flaming crosses to be racist. There are ways that you are probably racist in your everyday life. You don't have to be a bad person to be racist either, but just starting to understand that and unpick that and start to have those conversations and to include those around you, I think that's where your allyship really, really does start.
Yeah, thank you, Tassie. We all have unconscious biases, and it's just being comfortable to call them out. Elsie, how would you suggest that people could start being an ally?
May I just first of all start responding to Sandra? I just, at the same time that I am listening to this, I am getting messages from the board because they have seen your request for membership, and they were replying to it and how best to reply to you. And I think it's a great opportunity because yes, you are right, anyone can join the UKBPA, but there are two ways of joining it. One is as a member of the organization, and for that you have to identify yourself as Black, but you can join as an ally. And one thing that we are going to be doing is we are going to actually putting the spotlight on our allies. So you will be able to support us, not as a member, but as an ally. I hope that that is okay. And then with regard to your question, Amanda, how people can become an ally. But the one thing that they need to know, being an ally is not about you. You know, it's not an intention. It can be an intention, but it's about what is the impact that you are going to have on that, you know, on that organization, on that cause that you decide to become an ally. So it's about being present. Being present. It's about being yourself and being honest. You get lots of people, for instance, that saying, yes, I support equality and diversity, and I will do anything that it needs to be done. But then the actions don't reflect that intention, if that makes sense. So it's, you have to be prepared to not be popular, because you are going to be supporting the minority, whichever cause you decide to become an ally, or whichever you are passionate about it. You need to understand that you are going to be present, you are going to be looking for opportunities to highlight that something is not right, and how we are going to make it, we're going to, you know, rectify it. So you have to come out of your comfort zone. And if you are in a leadership position, you have to realize that it may be in a meeting where you have to stand up and say, hold on for a minute, this is not correct, this is not right, have you thought about it? And you may not be the popular one, but you have to have that courage to start that very, very difficult conversation that may put you in a disadvantage, in a disadvantaged position. So it's going to be a decision that you will have to make. Do I want to be in and out? What we don't want is people saying, yes, my intention is to support you. I will be doing it in policies, in, you know, long blogs and that sort of thing. But when it comes to the actions, you go and you keep having, you know, a recruitment process that are biased. You keep having votes that are all white. You keep making decisions that don't include those people that needs to be, you know, we don't want people to be talking about on our behalf. We want to be sitting at the table. And this is what the UK Black Farmers Association have done. We have made our own table. We have put our own chairs, and we are now saying, you know, you need to listen to us. So becoming an ally, you really need to be present. You need to make sure that that is where you want to be. And then there are many ways where you can't actually make this action, make it translated into an impact, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you, Elsie. And Claire, how have you started to be an ally and introduce that? Oh, Claire, you're on mute.
I hope I've been an ally to lots of colleagues over the years of a range of backgrounds, a range of colours, because I think as you go through your career, you see quieter people, people who you can see are at some kind of disadvantage, and you know, part of your role as a manager, or particularly as a leader, it is to support them. I think in particular around this agenda, my own particular actions, and I agree with Elsie and Tessa, this is, for me, this is about our actions. We can all say warm words, we can all, you know, get behind this, but it's about our everyday actions. So I started over the summer, and my commitment was, my reflection for the GPHC this year would be, what have I done in response to this? And I've written a big reflect piece, and actually writing it down was incredibly helpful, because you think, oh, okay, that looks not so bad. Crikey, that looks really flimsy and flaky, and I need to think about how I'm doing that more. So I think that personal reflection is really important. And then for me, it's about those everyday actions. So as Tessa and Elsie have said, you know, I'm asked quite a lot to bring people together, and I'm starting to try and almost sort of check myself to go, okay, have these people that I've brought together, are they a load of people that look like me or have a background that's similar to me? You know, even if that's a primary care background or a, you know, whatever, we do that unconsciously. I'm trying to sort of check that and go, no, hang on, let's have a think about this. Who are the people who need to be around that table, who've got something important to say? So I think there's kind of those sorts of things. There's absolutely the calling it out when you see racism, or I think when it's obvious racism, it's very easy to call out. And I hope when tested, I absolutely would do that. Where it's harder, and I think this is really hard in the NHS, is where you see people's behaviours at a sort of what could be classed as a small level, but have a massive, massive impact on the individual that they're directed to. And the microaggressions thing, you know, I think you get it occasionally as a female, but to start to open my eyes to how that might be impacting on others and to challenge that. I'm not saying this is easy, because it isn't, but I think my own, you know, work around being a better ally is to start to chip away at that and use the position of being a white woman to call that out when it's a woman of colour that is either excluded, or it might look subtle and no one else may notice, but I've noticed and they notice, and I need to do something about that. Not sitting here claiming I get it right all the time, not sitting here claiming it's easy, because it really isn't. But I think for me, it's about those everyday actions and being judged on those, as opposed to all the warm words that actually it's, you know, it's fairly straightforward for any of us to say. Yeah, a work in progress, I think, is how I would describe myself.
Thanks, Claire. And Sandra?
Well, thank you, Elsie, for explaining about the website. So I couldn't see an ally button to join, so I look forward to that soon, because I think that shared understanding does help. I can't walk in anybody else's shoes. I can only begin to try and understand some of the triggers, but I totally agree with Claire that if you're in a position to call something out, that is the most important thing you do. And I was reflecting on this and a couple of examples, not in the last 6 months, because I think people are more acute, but a couple of examples I've heard and didn't challenge. So that lesson to me is to try and do a little bit more of that, or not necessarily challenge, but question as to why these people on this panel, we're not organising conferences at the moment, and I don't mean this particular panel, but I can remember last year at the Black History Month, I think I stood up and said, I met some fantastic people here today, and I don't want it to be another Black History event when I'm meeting the same people. I want it to be some of our mainstream events. So that's the ambition, but Rome wasn't built in a day. Yeah, I'm probably allowed to say that. So yeah, this is going to be a long haul. Women still aren't there with equality. But one of the things I do know is, I think I said this in the English board meeting, was actually if we just get a lot of Black men in high profile positions, we'll have failed, because we won't have any, you know, we won't have done the gender thing. So in my experience, there isn't one ideal person or type of person. It's been quite interesting to me working on boards, committees, working with organisations for, you know, the last 25 years, that it's what people bring in their personal qualities, and that's really, really important to me. But as Claire said, if we're always just encouraging people in our own image, we don't get that richness. So we know that companies are better if they have diverse gender boards, and I would say that in the world of pharmacy, that will be better if we have the decision makers from a diversity of backgrounds, because after all, our patients are from a diversity of backgrounds. And actually the most racist thing I've heard was probably from my mother when she was in hospital, and I was absolutely appalled. So sometimes we need to start close to home with some of these attitudes. Actually, it might be a safer place to practice than when you're in a public arena.
Yeah, thank you, Sandra. So kind of following on from that, and I think we've already touched on it in some of the things that we've already said, but what do you think stops people from becoming allies, and how can they overcome that fear of being uncomfortable or speaking out? So I'll start with Claire on this one.
So I think, you know, people that know me know I'm not massively scared of speaking out. It's something that comes kind of fairly naturally. I don't know whether it's my northern heritage or what, but this agenda and, you know, racism and supporting people of colour is tricky for white people, because this, I touched on it earlier, you want to, for all the right reasons, want to do the right thing. And I don't mean in that in a tokenistic, so people judge you as a nice person. It's because it's abhorrent to you to see it. And so you want to act. I think the difficulty comes a little bit, and what probably holds some people back, I think it holds men back sometimes from standing up for the kind of feminist agenda as well, is the fear of patronizing or victimizing people. And I know I've spoken to Black pharmacy colleagues who said to me, well, I don't feel like a victim, and I don't want to be treated like a victim, and I don't want to be hauled out every time, a bit like Elsie said. So this is a real tricky balancing act at times. And obviously, you know, every person of colour is an individual, and their experience will be different, and their ability will be different, and where they are in kind of their leadership journey will be different too. So I think to sort of apply a blanket, well, I'm going to be an ally for everybody, is really kind of dangerous territory. And I think that holds people back. And I think what I've reflected over the last 6 months is, okay, I probably will on occasion get this wrong, but the more I talk to my colleagues with that lived experience, so my Black pharmacist colleagues, and go, well, can you just talk to me a bit about how that might have come across? Or if I said that, or for them to call me out when they go, well, actually, Claire, I know your intentions was fine, but actually that was a bit clumsy. That dialogue, I feel, is what will break down the barriers, so that people like myself, who I know really want to support this agenda and get equality, you know, my mantra has always been, I would like every layer through pharmacy to look like the entry layer at university. We're a very diverse profession. We should be very proud of that, but it isn't seen all the way through, and that should be the aim. But in order to have white people come forward and be able to do that, and as you say, Tessa, you use the privilege of being white, we have to have really difficult conversations to help us get that right. And I think that does hold people back. And I guess, you know, I'm not sitting here as any kind of expert at all, but if there's people listening who are white and would identify with what I've said, it's, come on, let's be brave here. Let's have some of those conversations. Let's do a little bit more on this. We might get it wrong, but sitting back isn't an option, really. If you want to do something, better to kind of get it a little bit wrong than sit back and say, well, actually, I did nothing. And that's how I'm feeling about it, certainly at the moment.
Yeah. And Sandra, in your experience?
It's different. I think one of the things that holds people back a bit is if there might be a backlash from the majority, and that might sound a bit odd, but if the last thing you want to do, say I'm taking some sort of initiative or what have you, the last thing I would want would be for a lot of white people to say, oh, you're just doing that because she is Black. And actually that is not what it is about, but that is what some of this can be perceived as about. So I sometimes think people don't step forward for that reason, because you know, a lot of their peers aren't in the same place. Claire's obviously in a place where she wants to do more. I suspect a lot of her peers aren't, and but some people are maybe a little bit not quite as far advanced on Claire's journey, maybe worried about that. And it's what really annoys me. I use a lot of female examples, and I'm going to apologize, not apologize for that, but it's what I know best. But there was a lot of talk when they had more women in Parliament in '97, and some of them were described as useless. And actually, what we should have been saying is not highlighting the poor performance of a few women. We should have been turning the spotlight on the men, because actually there are far more useless male MPs than ever there were women. So it's not listening to those negative voices, I think, is really important. And those negative voices can be a barrier to allyship. So if you hear things like that, I think you need to take a step back and think about what they're saying, and maybe flip it around in some way for a positive. I hope that makes sense. I'm not sure I've explained that very well.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, Sandra, is that, you know, it doesn't matter what people around you are saying, as long as you know that you're doing the right thing and you're taking a step back and reflecting, then that's the thing that should keep you on your allyship journey.
Yes, but I think I'm also saying that really you shouldn't judge any situation by one person or one action, and you should look at the totality. So you can't say, oh, that new person they've got isn't very good, without putting it into context of all the other people sitting alongside them who might not be very good, but because they may look different, they may have been singled out. And that's what's happened to women in the past. And I think we have to, if we hear any of that, challenge that, as you know, hopefully I'm very optimistic that we will within a few years see a more diverse range throughout senior levels in the profession, because I've met some brilliant people who are at the moment of an age where you wouldn't expect them to be leading the profession, but give them a few years and the right encouragement, I think it could look a lot different.
Brilliant, thank you, Sandra. And Tessa, what do you think stops people from becoming allies?
I think it comes back to my original point. I think that people don't see how powerful their one voice could be. I think that people think that they're not significant enough or in a position that's high enough to make any difference. And I think really people need to understand how powerful your one voice can be. And again, if you are doing it and the next person is doing it and the next person is doing it, how strong that becomes as a movement for change. And I also think that people don't think there's a problem, maybe because, you know, in that classic saying of, well, my best friend is black, so therefore I'm not racist, you know, I understand everything about the black experience through my friend. And what they do need to do is just expand their range of friends and understand the different perspectives and the different dimensions that either black people, people of colour, BAME people, whatever, have, and see that and really start to get a deeper, richer understanding of what it is, and then to see how in so many different ways they can actually become a better ally and to have more of an impact on where they are, you know, speaking up or supporting people of colour.
Thank you. And finally, Elsie.
Yes, I just was listening to the answers, and for me, I think that there are two things that probably, I think, stop people from being ally. We are in place of work, and sometimes that culture, the culture of the place of work, stop you from putting your head above the parapet and saying, oh, that is wrong. Or so people sometimes are scared, you know, of what the majority is going to be saying. And it's about, as a leader, you have to make sure that the environment, the culture within the place that you are leading allows for people to become proud allies. And another thing that probably stops people from being an ally is that they are afraid, as Claire said, they are afraid of being patronizing, are afraid of getting it wrong. And to overcome that, you just need to be humble. You need to be prepared to be wrong. You need to prepare to say sorry. And most importantly, you need to be prepared to learn, be open to learn. You know, ask the questions, find out how did that make you feel? That question we don't usually ask. And be curious about people's experiences. And that will make you an authentic ally, because there is nothing that I hate most, to go for these meetings and you hear these people, yes, and you are like, you just switched off because you cannot relate those words with the person that you are seeing. So if you take those steps of learning, saying sorry, there is nothing wrong with saying sorry. You know, you're just saying, you know what, I need to learn. And everyone is in a continuous process of learning. You know, I think this is my passion, but every time that I open a book, I learn more and more and more. And I said, you know what, this theory that I had, needs refining, needs to become better. I never thought of that point of view. So be open to learn from other people's experience, ask the question, and the next time you will, because you have reflection on it, you won't be perhaps not so blunt, you may not be so wrong, and it's a continuous process. And I think once that people like you see what you are doing, they will want to imitate you, because you may be unique at the when you start doing it, but when people see, oh my gosh, she's in a position of leadership and she's saying sorry, she's asking for an explanation, she's coming back, I better do that because I want to be. You don't know, you those little actions, what you're going to do is slowly you're going to be changing that culture within your place of work, and it won't be longer be a problem. It will be just the norm, the norm, and you will be leading without knowingness. You will people will overtake you, because people will always want to emulate. That's what we are as human beings. So to me, it's all about being prepared to learn, being prepared to do it, to get it wrong, learn from your mistakes, and then move on.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Elsie. I really like the fact that it's okay to change your mind. You might have a particular mindset about something, but if you've read something, it's okay to go, oh, following this, I've changed my mind. It's not stuck in stone. I'm just gonna ask the last question. I mean, I could talk about this all day. I find it really, really interesting. But just, I suppose, from each person, is there like one piece of advice that you'd give to someone who's listening? Any resources? I know, Elsie, you've given us a list, which we're going to put at the bottom of the Facebook chat for everyone to share, of books that you can read. But is there anything anyone would suggest that, advice that you would give to be an ally? So I'll start with Sandra this time.
Oh, that's a shame. I was thinking hard about that one. Yeah, reading all the books is one thing. Putting it into practice is yet another. And I'm going to choose another slightly gendered example. And it's not necessarily allyship in its biggest form, because sometimes it's a small stepwise approach that means you actually become more successful about it, at doing it. So you might decide to challenge unacceptable situations, and then you might want to go on from there. So it's great if you want to change the world overnight, but if you just want to change a little bit of it step by step, that's all great too. But the gender example is, I realised this was when I was first a local councillor, that all the men were making the decisions in the pub. And in those days, it was in the 90s, the women weren't invited to the pub. And when we raised this as an issue, it then became the norm for us all to go together. And it occurred to me, and this may or may not be an issue, that after work, who do you go to the pub with? Do you ask people who only look like you? Do you ask your whole workplace? Because there might be something in that. But in some cultures, it's not a great drinking culture. So should there be, let's all go for a coffee? So it strikes me that the best way to get to know people and learn a bit more about them is to do it in that informal session, where you do start to learn a bit more about each other, and we're not in our silos. I have the disadvantage of, well, it's a wonderful place, Hampshire, but ethnic population's very, very small. So I don't meet a diversity of people, but for some people, they do encounter them every day, but they probably don't socialise with them. So I think that sort of working together and a bit of playing together helps foster some of that.
Thank you. Tessa?
Well, I've got quite a few hints and tips. I think practicing is really important. Building up your confidence and, speaking out when you see things or hear things is something that we could all do, and we can all start to do in any form of allyship. And I agree, building your network and widening out your network is also very important. I'm just mindful of our audience of pharmacy professionals, and I think mentorship is something that is really, really key to building the allyship within the pharmacy profession as well. Choosing people to mentor, or choosing your mentor outside of your normal people that you would associate your mentorship with, would be a really key thing. And I think that's really important for us as pharmacy professionals in terms of opening up those doors and those channels to ensure that we are all able to achieve our potential, no matter who we are, where we're from, or what our makeup is. Then for me, I think that if there's anything that we can do, we should now start to look at mentorship and how we do that as a profession.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's a really good point about mentorship, which we should all kind of take forward. Elsie?
Yes, to me, probably two things only. I mean, at the moment, it feels really lonely, and what I want to see is people being more active, like in social media, be an ally. You know, say, go there and say why you are doing it. Why do you want to do it? I'm afraid that next week will be the end of Black History Month, and then we're going to all go quiet. And what I would like to see is this to continue. This is, just think about it as it's another therapy. You know, we have to make our profession more inclusive. So it's a continuous process that we need to have. So I want to see blogs, people sending little messages, do something that is visible to everyone. Use your network to do that. And if you are a leader in your place of work, introduce something new in your place of work. Think about outside, you know, once a month you may want to talk, you may want to bring the spotlight to something in history, something that will make people think about the different topics that we have spoke about during the Black History Month, you know, allyship, all of these things that we have spoken about. Do it on a regular basis, because as I say, it feels really lonely. Sometimes it's just us, the one doing it all the time, us, the one answering the question. So that is what I would like to see, more and more and more people talking about it. So it's just part of our normal conversation.
Thank you. And finally, Claire. Oh, you're on mute.
All of those things and a million more, but I guess what I would be maybe talking directly to the people who are wrestling with the, I want to do something but I don't know what to do, and I would almost sort of flip that and go, you know, fast forward 5 or 10 years, what if you've done nothing? What if you've just sat and wrestled but you've done nothing in this space? How will you feel as somebody who wanted to do the right thing but just couldn't quite get there? And think about how you're going to feel in 5 or 10 years. And if the answer is, if you do nothing, you're going to feel like you've let yourself down and you've let your colleagues down, then go and do something and get started, because actually it's not that difficult. We can all do something in this space. And as Elsie just said, the more of us that do something, the better this is for everybody.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much for all of your contributions and discussions today. It's been really helpful and I think really eye-opening, and hopefully people have been able to take away some really practical tips. We've only had one comment today and it's from Darren, and it's it's regarding the first point that Elsie made about it's not just Elsie's problem or the Black community, it's all of our problem, and we should all be supporting change. But he thanks you for your courageous efforts, so I thought that's important to read out. Also, we're not just ending this piece of work, you know, at the end of October, because that's when Black History Month finishes. As part of our I&D strategy, we're continuing that work, and if anyone listening really wants to be part of that, then I would encourage everyone to join ABCD, and because that's the key way of delivering our strategy. And please do join us again next week for our session on future of the for Black pharmacists. So we've got early career pharmacist panel and looking at what we can do to change things, and what should the profession look like in the next 5 to 10 years. So thank you again to everybody, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed the session.